Hey, everybody, it's the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. We are here on a Thursday. I'm going on vacation for my wedding anniversary, 10th wedding anniversary. My wife did not get a real ID in time, so we are going to the war torn streets of Portland, Oregon. We're going to eat and drink and all that down there. I'm going to not bring a microphone and probably not even bring a computer. We will be figuring out a place to watch the game on Friday when we make our drive down, but I wanted to talk about yesterday's game. Why are these all day games, by the way? It's very frustrating. I was very frustrated with some of the stuff that happened in yesterday's game, and I want to kind of drill back to where I think it all starts. First off, I mean, I don't have I don't have the expectation that any manager in present day baseball. I do think we're going to reach a point where managers are a little more analytics driven, and I think that this front office and this managing team, they combine to be pretty analytical. I think for some folks that aren't like aware of the analytics world, they seem very analytical. I think as Major League Baseball teams go, the aggregate of the front office and the managers are probably something a little bit above average as far as how much they lean on analytics. Um, and for some people, analytics is like a four-letter word, and for you, this is like not a good podcast to listen to because, uh, yeah, I mean, I care about analytics. I believe in analytics, and I don't even really think it's belief. I think that analytics are constantly evolving. Where I think that old school baseball mentality is intentionally not evolving. And a couple things were frustrating to me I feel like Dan Wilson gets a lot of credit for this like blend of old school and new school, and I just don't think I think the ways that he is old school are almost always ineffective. Like yesterday, the team starts Bryce Miller. And to me, it seemed very obvious at the beginning of the day. And this has been I tweeted it yesterday, so I'm not stealing this topic, but I did listen to some sports radio this morning. And this is like a topic that's made it to sports radio, which is the Mariners should not have pitched Bryce Miller a second time through the order, frankly. Bryce Miller's 2025 stats are tainted to a degree by injury, but they are the reality. Whatever that injury is still seems to be lingering. And Bryce Miller struggles a second time through the order. And the original plan with Bryce Miller, obviously, if Brian Wu was healthy enough to be on the postseason roster for the ALDS, was to have him move to the bullpen. He was the obvious choice of who was going to move to the bullpen. And then you kind of hoped if you could just use him one time through the order or less, the stuff would play up and he'd be effective. And that's what happened yesterday. First three innings, he was very good. The fourth inning, he got hit hard a couple times, made it through the fourth inning unscathed. At that point, you're like playing with house money. You got greedy. The team got greedy with Bryce Miller. In my opinion, the plan all along should have been to have Bryce Miller throw his 9 batters one time through the order, where he's very good, and he showed that he was very good. And then Emerson Hancock, no, almost not like almost irrelevant of what the score was or what the game position was. Emerson Hancock for the next 9 batters, and then from there you can decide: is this a game that the Mariners are in contention in, or do you use a Carlos Vargas who took up mop-up duties yesterday, which to me is where he should have been all along. Carlos Vargas is not a good Major League Baseball pitcher. He had a good stretch of run prevention, with just basically luck and smoke and mirrors at the beginning of the season, and he throws hard, but he is not a good pitcher. I got to put my notifications on Do Not Disturb because holy moly, do I have text messages coming in. So that's mistake number one, was not going in with what seemed like a plan. It was like they were going to feel out what Bryce Miller looked like, which this is a very old, like kind of touchy-feely manager thing. I just don't think it just doesn't play anymore. We have to stop thinking these guys are soothsayers and mind readers and just start following the analytics. Bryce Miller was not a good pitcher this year. He was injured. I think he is probably going to be a good pitcher I gotta Do Not Disturb on my phone. Actually, that's the only way I really know how to do it. I thought I was gonna know how to do it on my, but I don't know how to do it. Bryce Miller was not a good pitcher in 2025. Logan Evans, by the way, not a great pitcher in 2025. I think I said Emerson Hancock. Emerson Hancock, not a great pitcher in 2025. So if I said all these fucking text messages coming in, I think I screwed it up. What I meant is Emerson Hancock's on the roster. Logan Evans is not. They should have used Bryce Miller first 9 batters, Emerson Hancock next 9 batters, then figure out where you're at in the game. The original mistake, in my opinion, is when you lose Brian Wu. The original mistake is keeping Harry Ford on the roster and not putting another pitcher on the roster. I don't know what they're saving Emerson Hancock for. If you're not going to use him in yesterday's game when the game is out of hand and you're way behind and you have a chance to potentially save your bullpen, and you're not going to use him as the second leg of a bullpen game, what are you going to use him for? Emerson Hancock is better. Bryce Miller is better first time through the order than Emerson Hancock is first time through the order. But Emerson Hancock first time through the order is significantly better than Bryce Miller is second time through the order in 2025. And Logan Evans, by the way, who's not on the roster, Logan Evans, with, I will say, like, kind of shaky peripheral metrics, but he was great first time through the order this year. Logan Evans, what is he? Is he on the 60-day DL, or is he? I think he's healthy. I think he was healthy. I think he was throwing by the end of the season at the minimum. I thought that the original mistake is not taking another pitcher. I believe that the Mariners have 14 position players and 12 pitchers. And I think that's a mistake. I think teams got, especially because what have we seen? We saw Leo Rivas pinch run, and then we saw the most infuriating thing of them all. And I'll gripe about, I'm happy to gripe about the pitcher usage and the roster construction, because I think those are the original mistakes that are I think, here's what I'll say. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I don't think would have changed a 9-3 game into a game the Mariners won. I think that the pitching, it actually could really have done that. The hitting is incremental, right? So, like, I'm going to argue that Mitch Garver shouldn't be DHing, that Mitch Garver shouldn't be pinch hitting. I'm going to argue that, but that's like 2 plate appearances in a game at maximum if he's pinch hitting. If he's DHing, let's say it's 4 plate appearances. But a pitcher can really lead to run prevention. It's not incremental. This guy could just be, Emerson Hancock could have just pitched 3 or 4 scoreless innings yesterday, or 2 or 3 scoreless innings yesterday, which is significantly more impact than whatever Mitch Garver is going to do in his plate appearances at DH. But first off, Dominic Canzone against lefties. Of course, you think he's going to have big platoon splits. He actually hit 113 WRC plus against lefties this year. Mitch Garver, who's struggled on against both styles of pitchers, or both handedness of pitchers compared to his career average, 107 WRC plus. Dominic Canzone has been better against lefties in 2025 than Mitch Garver has. And also, he's significantly better against righties. To me, this is where there's some, like, feel thing or so. So then again, if to me, Mitch Garver, inexcusable pinch hitter, and if he's not going to be a pinch hitter and he's going to be a backup catcher, I actually do trust him in that role over Harry Ford. Mitch Garver has caught a major league pitching staff for a long time. Harry Ford is not. So why is Harry Ford on this roster? Why was Harry Ford on the roster at the end of the year? Of course, yes, if Garver gets hurt or Cal Raleigh gets hurt, that's first. Again, if you're not pinch hitting Mitch Garver, it doesn't matter. You're not worried about that. You have Mitch Garver on the bench. But if one of those guys gets hurt and you've already pinch hit Mitch Garver and he's out of the game, he's not available, yes, you have Harry Ford there. But you also would have him the next day if you could do this, like, injury taxi deal or whatever it's called. You could move Garver to some type of injured list. He would have to miss the next series for, but it's incredibly frustrating. I don't want to fixate completely on the roster construction, but Harry Ford being on the roster and not playing, Emerson Hancock being on the roster and probably should have played and didn't play, extremely frustrating. To go to Vargas in the Carlos Vargas in mop-up duty after using him in the 11th inning of a tied game is just complete lunacy. Yeah. So now you have the Mariners. They have a very tough matchup, a fourth matchup of the year with Tarek Skubal, and I was that's just the Mariners don't have some magic touch. They've been very lucky. This idea that the Mariners have Tarek Skubal's number is obviously a misnomer. They haven't actually performed incredibly well against Skubal. They just happen to have won the games that he started, and yeah, it's just going into yesterday, I felt like the Mariners had a legitimate shot of winning the World Series, which frankly I've never felt in my life. 1995 felt like a miracle. I never felt the 95 team had a real chance at winning the World Series. And I remember that very vividly. I was 10 years old or 9 years old, but I remember it very vividly. I remember the watching some of the lead up to the playoffs, and I think maybe a playoff game in school. I don't know if there were day games or not. I remember listening to I watched the one game playoff against the Angels. It was on the radio on my school bus, and then I watched the end of the game at my babysitter's house. They had one of the first big screen TVs I ever watched sports on. I never felt in that season like the Mariners had a legitimate shot. It felt like they really got lucky that year because they came back from so far behind. And I felt that way in all the years, the years, even 2001, where it's the Mariners, it felt like that team was getting by on some guys having just lucky career years, which frankly was the case. Also, very well constructed team, despite not having, like, I think, an analytical bent. Had a bunch of undervalued guys: Mark McLemore, Stan Javier, pre controversial steroid allegations, Brett Boone. I mean, I think that was the source of the allegations, but very well constructed team. None of those teams felt like they really had a chance to win the World Series to me. And this team did. If you could get through Detroit, it seems like this year there's just not really a top team. There's just not a team that has like a truly dominant team at this point. And I don't feel that way now. Now I feel like the odds are, I would suspect that the Mariners are not going to be favored in Game 5. What are the odds? I got to get out of here, but let's see what these odds are real quick before I go spouting off completely. Yeah, Mariners are underdogs. Plus 118 money line underdogs. So I think if they can make it, but and I guess the other thing about this whole to harp on the Hancock thing for one last second, the idea that you need him available for Game 5. Game 5, it's probably going to be started by George Kirby, but Luis Castillo is also going to be on full rest. Those guys, I'll say George Kirby and Luis Castillo neither should see more than 18 batters, but arguably neither should see more than 9 batters either. Do not take for granted that you're going to play a championship series. Do not prepare for the championship series. The first thing you have to do if you're the Mariners is win that series, but Emerson Hancock, you're not going to need Emerson Hancock for that. You're going to have a fully rested Luis Castillo and George Kirby. All right, I got to go. Thank you all for listening. Go Mariners, I guess. That's very frustrating. All right, bye.